Episode 7 of The Bad Batch is entitled Battle Scars and may be my favorite episode yet. We start off in the middle of a job that the Bad Batch are doing for Sid, which is a very different approach considering it hasn't opened up like this in mid-combat since the first episode. After returning to Sid's hideout and cashing in their bounty, they begin to argue over the lack of credits that Sid has been giving them, only to be interrupted by the sound of a blaster coming from the upstairs bar. They make their way into the bar to find a figure, hooded and cloaked, with a blaster in hand. And it turns out that the Martez sisters really did give the information to the right person because the cloaked figure is none other than Captain Rex. Rex has been trying to find more people to join in the fight against the Empire and is catching Echo up on what he's been doing since the end of the war. Omega and Wrecker make their way back from their after-job tradition of getting Mantell mixed, and we get to have a really cool moment between Omega and Rex. As Omega is introduced to Rex, Rex is very surprised that he's never seen a clone quite like her. And he's even more surprised when Omega recognizes him as a Generation 1 clone, all because of the lines on his face. The moment doesn't last very long, however, as Wrecker's head begins to hurt yet again and the tensions escalate drastically, saying that since the Bad Batch have not removed their chips, they are a danger to everyone around them and that these chips are not something that you can just take control over. He insists that they remove their chips immediately and they begin to make arrangements to do so, with Rex saying that he will get back to them on how they are going to go about this procedure. The Bad Batch agree to meet Rex on Bracca, which is a great tie-in to Jedi Fallen Order. But before they get there, Wrecker starts asking if they really have to go through with this because he is not excited about the idea of having someone cut open his head, and honestly, who could blame him? Tech says that they've all agreed to it so they're going to be going through with it, all except Omega, since she doesn't have an inhibitor chip, which I found to be very interesting. I suppose there was no real reason for her to have her own inhibitor chip, since she's probably not supposed to see combat in any way, but it's still very interesting why the Kaminoans didn't process this in her brain. We finally get to Bracca, and wow is it awesome. The entire planet is covered in the destroyed pieces of Venator-class Star Destroyers, just like it was in Fallen Order, the entire planet just being a relic of the past with the amount of Republic ships that are just laying to waste. The Bad Batch meet up with Rex and start their plan. They have to make their way into a Venator-class Star Destroyer and from there head toward the medical bay where they can then remove their chips, the same way Rex had his removed in the last season of the Clone Wars. They still have to be careful with their path towards the Venator because the Scrapper Guild does still run the planet and is in charge of breaking down all of these ships. Unfortunately, it can't be all too easy as they come to a break in the ship, cutting them off from the medical bay. They decide to use a cable to grapple across, and of course, they save Wrecker for last, and the cable gives out. And as Wrecker begins to fall down the corridor, not only does he smack his head again, this time very hard, but he also gets the honor of fighting against the Ibnis Maw, a creature similar to the Zarlak that we see in Fallen Order. They're able to save Wrecker and get to the medical bay without any further issues, that is, of course, until they attempt to get Wrecker's chip out. I'm not exactly sure what caused it to finally go off, but I think it was a mix of the conversation going on around him along with the location. We've seen in previous episodes that Wrecker doesn't like having his head touched, so having a scanner on his head probably played a big part. But the conversation that was happening was what really stressed me out. They kept mentioning Order 66 and how they let the Jedi Padawan escape, and every time something like this was mentioned, I kept thinking, stop talking, you're making it worse. But by that point, it was too late and Wrecker goes full Order 66 mode. In an instant change of pace, he knocks out Tech and starts chasing down Omega, which was actually very terrifying. And with Omega and Wrecker separated from the rest, I really thought it was going to have to come down to killing Wrecker to get him off of Omega. And I was actually fully prepared to see this happen, but thankfully, Rex showed up just in time and stunned him. The rest of the Bad Batch are able to get their chips out successfully, and Wrecker and Omega are able to share their after-mission snack again, as well as make up for what had just happened, because Omega knew all along that it wasn't Wrecker's fault. He had no control over his inhibitor chip. Rex does hope that he can convince the Bad Batch to come along and help out against the Empire, but Hunter states that they can't and he has to do what is best for his squad. And of course, it would not be an episode of The Bad Batch without leaving us with a stressful cliffhanger, as two members of the Scrapper Guild notice them and instantly report them to the Empire. So I guarantee because of this, Crosshair is going to get word and be hot on their trail. Overall, this was a terrific episode. The Bad Batch is really sticking out to me for having its own style of storytelling, and it doesn't disappoint. Sure, some of the episodes felt like filler to me, but I still don't mind it. especially now that it looks like we're going to get right into the action. But what were your thoughts on this episode of The Bad Batch? Did you like seeing Rex again? And what are your theories on why Omega doesn't have an inhibitor chip? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.